was an August morning in 1989, and the skies were cloudy in the Quebec City suburb of Beauport. As young Nancy lay daydreaming in her bed, her mother finished making breakfast. Suddenly, a deafening noise above her head brought Nancy back to reality. A few seconds later, another noise, this time even more violent, shook her out of her reverie once and for all. A few centimeters from her bed was a hole in the wall. The teenager was terrified. Mama! The ride they'd been on for several weeks had just become too bumpy, and now the four tenants of the building knew that it was time to move out.
One has to remember that something special happened in Beauport near Quebec during the summer of 1989. It was to the effect that a house started to perform irregularly.
Precisely what's going on in this house.
Well, the wall is moving back and forth, just like that. And then it makes a kind of noise, like that. Oh, cow, it can't get any better than what you're seeing right now before your very eyes.
We were skeptical ourselves. We thought that someone was knocking from the other side. But the police bore witness to the fact that there was no one in the other apartment.
People living inside this house started to observe different strange phenomena. Of course, it scared the daylight out of them, and they started to look for answers. What the hell is happening?
Mrs. Godbout was the first one to hear a loud bang coming from the wall that separated her apartment from her neighbors. The impact was so strong that the plaster was coming off the wall. Mrs. Godbout thought that Mrs. Cochran was responsible for the noise. In the 48 hours that followed the first bang, the residents of the dwelling on Monseigneur Gauthier Street heard 19 more. The house shook with the force of each one. Distraught, the tenants contacted the city of Beauport, and a building inspector was sent to their residence.
While I was there, one woman said to me, "It just happened again." Then she said, "Just wait, Mr. Dubé, and it'll happen again." She told me, "Place your shoulder against the wall and you'll get a taste of what it's like." I heard cracking sounds like pistols going off. And so I leaned my shoulder against the wall, and then all of a sudden it hit. I was struck so hard, I was really dumbfounded. I could attest that there was something abnormal going on in that house.
Within a few days, everyone's nerves were shattered in that building on Monseigneur Gauthier Street. Everyone was accusing their neighbor of being behind the disturbances. They all suspected each other and wouldn't believe anything their neighbors said. The tenants of the haunted house, as it was referred to by the neighborhood, were in dire need of assistance.
The firemen and the police were investigating everywhere, trying to find out what was going on in that house.
At first, it was proposed that gas might be leaking up from the ground and causing pressure on the structure of the dwelling. The Metropolitan Gas Company sent a technical team to perform an analysis.
While we were below, we heard a loud noise coming from upstairs, like a fist pounding on the wall. We went upstairs, but we didn't see anyone or anything. But we did finish our testing and effectively found no trace either of natural gas or of methane in the building.
A team of reporters from a local TV station who had heard of the case interviewed a geological engineer who thought that perhaps the clay soil was responsible for the shaking of the building.
The moving wall acts a little bit like a membrane, and when it moves, it's because there are jolts coming from the wall, not from the roof. This is what we call unequal settling. Because of a lack of precipitation, the soil dries out, thus causing the walls to put pressure on the membrane.
In the days following this report, the region had a lot of rainfall, but the situation didn't change. Also, if the ground had anything to do with these noises, why weren't any of the other houses in the neighborhood experiencing the same thing?
If the surrounding houses were not disturbed by this phenomena, one has to look at the year that the house was built, how the footing of the house was made compared to the other housing around the immediate area. And then you have also to dig into the soil. There could be a big rock underneath the house next to the one we're talking about, therefore having a completely different base.
When experts failed to come up with a rational explanation, rumors began to circulate that a poltergeist was to blame. On the afternoon of August 4th, the city of Beauport ordered an evacuation of the premises to ensure the safety of the occupants. Several of them were convinced that the terrifying manifestations were due to mischievous spirits, otherwise known as poltergeists. For the 4 families involved, the nightmare would soon come to an end.
It was around 10 o'clock. I was half asleep when I heard the noise. I got out of here as fast as I could.
As long as this phenomenon was limited to one wall, public authorities allowed the tenants to stay. But now that more than one wall is affected, they're taking no chances and have ordered the tenants to evacuate. At that point, people were almost panicking. The landlord, the tenants, everybody was scared. Fear set in as to what was going on, and people didn't want to stay there anymore. They didn't even want to spend one more night there.
Later that August, the tenants returned to their apartments to collect their belongings. It seemed that the noises were not as strong and not as frequent as before. By the end of the month, the phenomena seemed to have ended. The spirits had finally left 3566 Monseigneur Gauthier Street once and for all.
I don't believe in this ghost or whatever it is. All I can say is that the house is still standing and that people are living in it.
To my knowledge, it is very feasible that the fact that we had a very, very dry summer in 1989, the Beauport phenomena is something that is very natural to explain, but certainly not supernatural.